Supercomputer models are converging on something forecasters haven't seen in over a century. A Super El Niño taking shape in the equatorial Pacific for late 2026, on track to push sea surface temperatures past 3.0 degrees Celsius above normal, hotter than the historic 1997 and 2015 events, and possibly the strongest on record since the 1800s. On August 3, 2026, NOAA put real numbers behind the worry, an 81% chance it reaches very strong status by year's end, and a 97% chance it lingers all the way through spring 2027. The ripple effects are already mapped out: a quieter but more dangerous Atlantic hurricane season, atmospheric rivers slamming California, drought splitting Africa in half, monsoon failure across South Asia, and a real shot at 2027 becoming the hottest year ever recorded. Here's how one number in the ocean turns into weather chaos on every continent. Picture a climate analyst named Priya, staring at a bank of buoy readings at 6 a.m. with her coffee going cold beside the keyboard. A colleague pokes his head in and asks the question everyone in her building has been asking for weeks. Is this actually as big as people are saying? Priya doesn't answer right away. She just turns her monitor around and points at a number 100 meters below the ocean surface, a pool of water sitting 5 to 6 degrees Celsius above where it should be. That's not noise, she says. That's fuel. To understand why that number matters, you have to understand what El Niño actually is. Under ordinary conditions, steady trade winds blow east to west across the Pacific, dragging warm surface water from South America toward Indonesia and Australia and piling it up in the Western Ocean like water pushed to one end of a bathtub. Because that warm water keeps getting shoved away from the American coast, cold, nutrient-rich water rises up to replace it, a process called upwelling, and the reason the coastlines of Peru and Ecuador support some of the richest marine ecosystems on the planet. Every so often, that whole system stalls. The trade winds weaken, the wind pressure holding all that warm water in place lets go, and gravity does the rest. Millions of square miles of accumulated heat come sloshing back east across the Pacific in a slow, underwater wave. When it reaches South America, it caps off the upwelling completely, the ocean surface temperature spikes, and all that stored heat starts radiating straight up into the atmosphere. That's El Niño. What's forming now is El Niño, with the volume turned all the way up. Priya likes to describe it to non-scientists with a bathtub analogy. Imagine holding a hairdryer at one end of a full bathtub, blowing all the warm surface water toward the far wall for months at a time. Eventually, you get tired and stop. The water doesn't just sit there, it sloshes back across the tub in a single, uneven surge. That surge, scaled up to an ocean roughly the size of every continent on Earth combined, is what's currently underway in the equatorial Pacific, and it's why the effects don't stay contained to any one region. Forecasters measure the severity with something called the Oceanic Niño Index, which tracks how far above average the central and eastern Pacific gets. A strong El Niño crosses 1.5 degrees Celsius above normal. A Super El Niño needs 2.0 degrees Celsius or higher. The 2015 event, one of the two most damaging on record, peaked at an extreme 2.75 degrees Celsius. The models Priya and her colleagues are watching right now are tracking a trajectory that clears 3.0 degrees Celsius, which, if it holds, would make this the strongest event in more than 125 years of record keeping. And this isn't just a model projection sitting in a spreadsheet. The subsurface buoy network is already showing the heat physically in place, being pushed toward the surface as the trade winds continue to weaken. The first place the effects usually show up is the Atlantic hurricane season, and it's a strange kind of good news, bad news setup. All that warm Pacific water generates powerful high-altitude winds that sweep across Central America into the Atlantic basin, creating wind shear, an atmospheric force that tilts and tears apart storms before they can organize. That's why forecasters expect a below-average season, something like 13 named storms against a historical average of 15. But Priya is quick to flag the catch. The Gulf of Mexico and Western Caribbean, much closer to the US coastline, stay exceptionally warm regardless, which makes them a breeding ground for sudden, homegrown storms outside the reach of that protective wind shear. People hear fewer storms and relax, she says. 1992 was an El Niño year with a quiet season. It still gave us Hurricane Andrew. 2018 was the same story with Michael. Both were Category 5. It only takes one. As 2026 tips into winter, the chaos shifts inland over North America. The heat pouring off the equatorial Pacific re-energizes the subtropical jet stream and drags it south over the United States, turning it into an efficient conveyor belt for Pacific moisture. For California, that means a high chance of frequent, intense atmospheric rivers, badly needed drought relief, but also a serious risk of flooding and mudslides if the volume overwhelms the ground. That same energized jet stream carries heavy, beneficial rain into Texas and the Gulf Coast, then runs into warm, humid air over the southeast. Florida in particular tends to see a volatile, severe weather season during strong El Niño winters, with elevated tornado and damaging wind risk from November through March. Meanwhile, the northern tier of the U.S., the Pacific Northwest, and much of Canada typically swing the other way, drier and warmer than average. Across the Atlantic, the UK and Northern Europe often see colder, drier conditions later in winter, though Priya is careful to note that piece is the least predictable of the bunch. It's worth pausing on why a single ocean basin can reach across an entire hemisphere like this. The atmosphere doesn't recognize coastlines or borders. It's one continuous fluid wrapped around the planet, and a large enough disturbance in one part of that fluid inevitably pushes and pulls on every other part. The jet stream is essentially a river of fast-moving air circling the globe at cruising altitude heights, and its position dictates where storm systems track, where cold air pools, and where moisture gets dumped. Warm the Pacific enough and you don't just change the local weather over the ocean. You nudge that entire river off its usual course, and everything downstream of it, meaning basically all of North America and a good chunk of the Atlantic, shifts with it. Zoom out further and the picture gets genuinely global. South America gets hit on two fronts. The sudden collapse of upwelling devastates fish populations that coastal communities depend on, while heavy sustained rainfall raises severe flood risk along Peru, Ecuador, and northern Chile. Even as, at the very same time, shifting circulation can plunge the Amazon basin into drought. Australia sees the mirror image of South America's flooding. With the warm water and storm clouds dragged east toward the Americas, the western Pacific is left cooler and drier, shutting down normal rainfall and, combined with the continent's existing heat, sharply raising wildfire risk. NOAA's August 3rd assessment didn't just flag the Pacific event. Waters right off South America were already running 3.2 degrees Celsius above average, well past the 2.0 degrees Celsius threshold that defines a very strong event. And that much thermal energy doesn't stay contained. The World Meteorological Organization is now tracking a positive Indian Ocean dipole developing at the same time, sometimes called El Niño's sister effect. The western Indian Ocean runs unusually warm, the eastern side runs cool, and the shift in wind patterns threatens to suppress the southwest monsoon that hundreds of millions of people across South Asia depend on for water and agriculture. Africa, meanwhile, is being pulled in two directions at once. East Africa is looking at heavy, above-normal rainfall. Good news on paper, except hard. Dry soil can't absorb that much water fast enough, raising the risk of flash flooding and crop damage. Southern Africa is bracing for the opposite. The low-pressure systems that normally bring seasonal rain are being deflected away, setting up crippling drought from mid-2026 through the first quarter of 2027, and putting serious strain on regional water reservoirs. Priya finally leans back from her desk and says the quiet part out loud: an El Niño, at its core, is just a massive transfer of stored ocean heat into the atmosphere. And because the wind carries that heat around the entire planet, it temporarily raises Earth's baseline temperature. Based on how much energy is sitting in the subsurface Pacific right now, there's a real probability that 2027 becomes the warmest year ever recorded. The mechanism has a built-in delay too. Global atmospheric temperatures typically peak several months after the ocean itself peaks. since it takes time for that heat to radiate out and circulate through the troposphere fully. If the current models hold, that lag means the full thermodynamic hangover from this event stacks on top of an already warm baseline. Scientists are already drawing comparisons to 1997 and 2015, but with one important caveat Priya keeps repeating to anyone who'll listen. The sheer volume of heat trapped beneath the Pacific surface right now is, in her words, unprecedented. Enough that 2027 doesn't just risk matching those records, it risks breaking them outright. Before she finally shuts her laptop for the night, Priya pulls up one more chart, just out of habit, the slow, steady climb of that subsurface warm pool over the past several months, plotted against 1997 and 2015 for comparison. The current line sits above both of them the entire way through. She doesn't say anything dramatic about it. She just saves the image, forwards it to the rest of the team with a 2-word note, still climbing, and heads home, knowing the number will look different again by morning. That's the part that rarely makes it into the headlines. This isn't a single dramatic announcement. It's a slow-motion event that meteorologists have been quietly watching build for months, one buoy reading at a time, long before most of the world starts feeling it.